Carl Richards has spent more than 25 years behind the microphone, on radio and on stage, entertaining and influencing audiences around the world. He's a 3-time best-selling author, TEDx speaker and MC, the host of 2 podcasts, and is the founder and CEO of Podcast Solutions Made Simple. Carl helps coaches, consultants, and other subject matter experts become the go-to expert and elevate their credibility by launching world-class podcasts. He lives with his spouse in Ontario, Canada, where he enjoys camping and boating in the 1,000 Islands. All right, Carl, we are ready. Come on down.
Thank you very much, LaDonna. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm not using my microphone or my headset. I'm coming through loud and clear. Awesome. Fantastic. How about a round of applause for LaDonna and what she's done and her team and what she's put on today. How about that? Eh? Isn't this fantastic? And 4 great speakers so far. So what a fantastic day, LaDonna. Thank you so much. I know it's our first time working together. So thank you so much for having me here to speak today. I want to start with a quick story. I was at an event for podcasters and wannabe podcasters, I guess about a year ago. And one of the presenters was very, very emphatic when he said this. He said, if you're a coach or a consultant and you don't have a podcast, you are doing your business a disservice. And when I heard those words, I thought, whoa, that's coming on a little bit strong. But then I started to think about it a little bit. And I said, yeah, I agree with that to a certain extent. But then I started to ask myself, why do I agree with this? Not just to jump on the bandwagon and say, yeah, podcasting, but to actually really understand why. And that I started to formulate the talk that I'm sharing with you today and really start to explore why podcasting is indeed the new era of marketing. But why is that? Why are we seeing and hearing more podcasting today than we ever have before? So I want to share with you some information that's happened in recent weeks and months in the podcasting space. So, and flip chart, because I like to shake things up a little bit and make sure that you're awake as well. So I want to start by sharing with you that some information here. The first one being that on-demand content has surpassed streaming content. According to Edison Research, on-demand content has surpassed streaming content. That means that podcasting has jumped ahead of where radio used to be. The second thing I want to share with you is about listenership. And listenership, no surprise here probably, but it's gone up substantially in the last 5 years. As a matter of fact, it has doubled in the last 5 years. And when we see that on-demand content is up versus streaming, and we see this, by the way, with television, where we tune into more on-demand programs, Netflix, Amazon, all of those other streaming services, it's no surprise that listenership in the podcasting space is up. Here's something that's interesting, though. 93% of people who are tuning into podcasts, guess what? They listen to the entire episode. 93% of podcast listeners listen to the entire episode. And when you want to figure out who's listening, well, you know that 93% of them are tuning into the entire thing. Let's talk about ads, because ads, not only are they up, we'll talk about that right now, actually. The podcast ads that are out there, it's a huge space, as you'll find out in just a moment. Podcast ads sell better than traditional ads. According to the folks at Sonic Boom, they did a survey and they found that a purchase intent from a potential customer outperformed any other media by 58%. So if you're still looking at conventional media, radio, television, print, newspapers, even push notifications, because that's a part of marketing, right? That's being outperformed by podcasting. And the final thing about ads that I want to mention is that the podcast advertising space, I can't put enough dollar signs here because it's just growing in leaps and bounds, with podcast advertising growing the first quarter of 2023, which, as I know, seems like it's so long ago, but the first quarter of 2023 saw ad revenue upwards of $2 billion for podcasts versus 1.8 billion for radio broadcasting. So when you're wondering, okay, well, is this a viable place where I should be putting my marketing efforts and my marketing dollars? The clear answer is yes. It's not a fad. Podcast isn't going away anytime soon. It's here to stay. But why is it so powerful? What is it about podcasting that makes it have all of this power? Let me share some thoughts with you about that. Well, from a marketing standpoint, you should understand that podcasting really helps you be seen and showcases you as the expert, and really helps to build up your credibility. It used to be, if you were a speaker, for example, you would publish a book, you would go on a speaking tour, do all these speaking engagements, maybe you'd get on radio, maybe even TV as well with that book, and that's how you would grow and expand in the speaking world, right? Now it's shifting. People still write books. I'm not saying they don't. People still go into print. I'm not saying they don't. But what I am saying is that we're seeing this as a very viable place to build your credibility and position yourself as the expert. And a lot of people will actually position themselves, if they're thinking of writing a book, they'll do podcasting and book at the same time, concurrently. All right. Then the other nice thing about podcasting is it puts you in front of your, actually, I don't like that word. I like this word. It's also quicker to write for me. It puts you in front of your ideal client or your avatar every single time, because when you position your content for your ideal client, guess what? That's who's going to show up every single time. So it's not, you're not guessing who you're going to be speaking to. You already know who you're speaking to. Wouldn't it be great if every time you stood on stage, you knew you were speaking in front of your ideal client? Well, that's what a podcast is. It's a speaking opportunity. You're on the stage, you're sharing all of your knowledge and all of your wisdom, or sharing with your guests knowledge and wisdom in front of your ideal client every single time. I really like this piece because podcasts also play well with all your other marketing tools, your funnels, your social media, your blogs, your newsletters, your email list. Everything plays quite well when you market or add a podcast to your marketing strategy, because there's nothing to reinvent. You just make that part of your strategy. So when you're talking about, today on my podcast, I'm talking about, oh, and by the way, it's also the focus in my blog. It's going to be in your newsletter. And guess what? It's now part of your social media strategy as well. The other thing I like about podcasting from a marketing perspective too, is it really helps to build community. And community is something, when I got into the podcasting space, I didn't even think about it in these terms. But when I look at some of the clients that we've helped get into the podcasting space in the last 2 to 3 years, I'm recognizing that those who are really successful at it, guess what? At the same time, they're also building a massive community. They're also building a massive community. So their listeners, they're inviting them after the show to do things like come into a private group, or come and hang out with us on a meetup. They're doing all of those things, and they're building community, which does what? It's ultimately leading to more dollars. And it does lead to not just dollars, but multiple streams of income. It used to be that if you wanted to have a podcast, you wanted to make some money from it, you'd build a podcast, you'd get a bunch of listeners, you'd go to a reputable company and say, hey, I've got this podcast, it's got 10,000 listeners or more, and give me some money, sponsor my show. It's changed a little bit. There's multiple streams. I can't talk about all of this today, but there's multiple streams of revenue that can happen just from having one podcast, above and beyond the conventional thought of just your typical sponsorship. All right. So if it's such a good marketing tool and a great place to be, and there's people coming to this platform more and more, why don't more people have podcasts? Why don't more people have their own show? So I'm going to ask that question of you. Why don't you have a podcast yet? If you're not podcasting yet, pull put in the chat why you don't have a podcast. What is it that's holding you back from being in this space? If you just want to type in the chat what it is that's holding you back, maybe it's time, maybe it's not sure where to get started, maybe it's money, maybe it's content, whatever it is. And if you do have a show, what held you back from getting in the space? I see some answers coming in. Just going to go over to the chat and see what we've got here. A couple of answers coming in. Can't stay consistent. That's a good one, Jen. No idea where to start. Don't know how to start. Okay. All right. So what I want to share with you, not sure how to do it. All right. Thanks, Elisa. Was never on my radar to think about. Heather, great. I have a podcast show. Great. Vera, that's fantastic. Like being a guest, digital desires. Okay. So a lot of great reasons. So what I want to walk you through now is what I like to refer to as the 5 myths or 5 reasons why people don't start their own shows. What is it that holds them back? All right. So the 5 myths. The first myth is the money myth. The first myth is the money myth. And when we think of the money myth, when people first look at podcasting, they think, oh my goodness, that's going to cost so much money. I've got to build a studio. I have to have a bank of microphones and all of that stuff. And we base our ideas on this based on what we see other successful podcasters doing. You know, we look at Joe Rogan's studio, for example, and say, oh, I got to have a table and all these mics and a producer. And oh my goodness, how am I going to ever do this? It's too expensive. It's off my radar. What we're really not focusing on, though, is the bigger picture, is we don't know what the value of a podcast is. And for those clients that we've helped service in the last 3 years, we understand that for some of them, having a podcast means that if they connect with one new client over the course of a year minimum, the podcast has more than sold itself. It's more than paid for itself. So it's not just about the money coming in, it's knowing the value of what having that show is going to have. The second myth is the content myth. And I think somebody touched on it already. Somebody said, I don't want to write about, I don't want to talk about. Well, it's not so much content, because I will guarantee that for this particular audience here today, you already have your content. Raise your hand if in the last, let's say since January of this year, you've written a post on Facebook or LinkedIn, Instagram, ran a workshop, course, seminar, written a book, created a funnel, anything like that. Raise your hand if you have done any of those things in the past year. You have content. What you might not understand is that there's a way to create or curate your content. So it's not that you don't have it, it's just maybe it needs to be curated differently for a podcast, but you have it. All right. So that's the second myth. The third myth is the competition myth. There's too many out there. Who is ever going to listen to me? Right? The honest to goodness truth is there are 5 million podcasts worldwide right now. There's this thing called pod fade. I don't want to do a deep dive into this, but pod fade really means that of those 5 million, only about 40% of them, 60% of them are active. So that really means that only 3 million are active, roughly, and that number fluctuates all the time. But the bigger picture here is you're all business owners, you're all CEOs, you're all, in your companies. Would you hesitate to go into business or do something if or build something if you didn't have a website? Of course you'd say, well, no, I need a website. I need to have a website for my business. But it's the same reason why people didn't launch websites that many years ago. They're saying, well, I don't need a website. You'd never say that, right? So that's the whole point there. Plus, a lot of people look at competition and say, well, I don't know, I'm not as famous as Joe Rogan or Oprah Winfrey or some of those other people. And who's going to listen to me? Well, the honest to goodness truth is the celebrity status people, the Oprah Winfreys of the world, the Tony Robbins, that only represents probably less than 1% of people podcasting. It's people who are like you and I, who are business owners or people that have a message to share, who are really wanting to get that message out there. All right. The fourth myth is the tech myth. I think a couple of people put that in the chat. And it's, you know what, it does hold a lot of people back, but it's the same reason why when I hit a technical snag, for example, there's a reason why I don't perform my own medical procedures on myself, because I'm not an expert in that area, thankfully. I would never remove my own appendix. It's just not something I would do. I would also not fix my own car, because if I did, my spouse would come running outside and saying, "What are you doing?" If for no other reason, because it's a Tesla, there's nothing to fix. But even still, we've learned over the course of time, when you need something done and you don't know how to do it, you go to the person who knows how to do it and can help you do it. All right. And that's what we do, is help people navigate through the technology. And the fifth myth is the time myth. And the time myth is one that will really frustrate and get a lot of us stuck. But we all know we have 168 hours, all of us, in a month. In a week. We all have 168 hours in a week. It's how we are managing that time, number one. But the second thing is, with the time myth, a lot of us think that, well, my podcast has to be at least an hour long. Let me ask you, and you can put your answer in the chat here, how long should a podcast episode be? If you're podcasting, share how long your episodes are. Just pop it in the chat. How long should a podcast episode be? 20 minutes, 3 hours? Just pop some answers in the chat there. 20 to 30 minutes. I'm going to go to the chat here. 45 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes, 1 hour, 20 minutes. Okay, all right. So some varied answers. So I like that. Someone said, so the honest truth is, there are podcasts out there that are 2 minutes long, and there are podcasts out there that are longer than 2 hours long. Thank you. I just wanted to launch some balloons as I was doing that. So, but the honest to goodness truth is how long can your audience engage you? How long can they be engaged by you? And if it's 20 minutes, then that's how long your podcast needs to be, is 20 minutes. But the bigger answer to this question is, or to debunk this myth is, it's not, how am I going to get all this done? How am I going to fit this in my day? It's who can help me do it. It's the same reason why I'm sure in business at some point, and if you're not already there, you might get there sooner than later, where you'll say, I can't get everything done. I need a virtual assistant. I need an accountant. I need a bookkeeper. I need a this. Because as you grow and expand, that's the things that we need. So once you've debunked those myths, then you can get started and launch your show. And how do you do that? How do you simply launch your show? Well, there's a 3-step process that I like to call the Podcast Solutions Blueprint. Looks a little better than I drew it yesterday, which is good. I failed circle drawing in school. And it's the 3 Ps, the Podcast Solutions Blueprint. The first P is for planning. And in the planning stage, that's where you're going to start to conceptualize your show. How long are the episodes going to be? What's it going to be about? Am I going to have guests? Am I going to be doing it solo? Will it be a mix of both? And what's my goal? What's the desired outcome I want from my show? Plus, we talk about things in this stage like music, getting an original score for you to help with your sonic branding of your podcast, artwork. And it's also where we start to flush out your content strategy for those who are maybe struggling with, oh my goodness, content, where's it going to come from? This is where that all happens, is in the planning stage. The second P is for production. And this is where it all starts to come together. This is where you start to do your interviews, or you're talking solo, you're doing your solo episodes, you're recording, you're editing, you're mixing it down, you're packaging it, getting it all ready to go, your show notes, your links, and then you're publishing it and making it ready to send out into the podcast universe. And the third P is for promotion. This is the one that sometimes gets forgotten. As a matter of fact, quite often it gets forgotten. People will create a show, they'll put a lot of planning into it, they'll put a lot of production into it, they'll even hire a guy like me to say, can you help me? And I'll say, sure. And then we launch the show, and then all of a sudden people will say, tell anybody. You need to tell people when you have a podcast. You have to shout it from the mountaintops, post it on social media, send it to your email list, Call all of your colleagues, your close associates, and say, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you do me a solid? Can you listen to the show? Can you like? Can you subscribe? That's how you build that show, and that's how you build a community. But under promotion, that's where we have a marketing strategy, an organic marketing strategy, and a detailed marketing strategy. Building out your community, networking, going to events like this and saying, I have a podcast. I have 2 of them. It was said in my introduction. But then also starting to figure out some of those monetization strategies to help leverage the podcast to bring more revenue into your business. Not to bring more revenue to the podcast, but to bring more revenue into your business. And maybe this seems a little bit daunting at the beginning. Maybe it seems daunting at the beginning, and maybe what you want to do at the beginning is maybe start by being a guest. Being a guest is a great place to start, because when you're a guest, here are some of the highlights of being a guest. Again, you get to showcase your expertise. Show of hands if you're an expert and you want everyone to know it. Show of hands. Who's an expert? Excellent. I see all the hands I can see on the screen go up, which is good. But not only that, you're going to grow your credibility. Of course, you're going to grow your credibility, because if you're coming on a show as an expert, and it's very hard to get on a show if you're not an expert, you're going to go with some credibility, right? You're going to say, hey, here's all the things I've done. Here's the book I've written. Here's the courses I've run. Here's what I do. Here's my business, right? The other thing about being a guest that I really like is it leads to speaking opportunities. It leads to speaking opportunities. And those speaking opportunities, by the way, could be being asked to be a guest on another podcast, or it could actually be, hey, I have an event coming up and I'd love you to speak at it. I think you'd be great. I actually had that happen recently. I was invited, after speaking on a podcast, I was invited by the host. He said, I have this great community. I think you'd love the community. I'd love you to come into the community. Oh, and by the way, I'm hosting an event in the spring, and I think you'd be a great fit for the stage. And of course I said, sure, send me the speaker application. More than happy to put my name out there. But that happens quite often when you're a guest. And the other thing, of course, is it's going to lead to monetization. It's going to lead to some money, because when you're putting your face out there and you're putting your best foot forward as a guest, it's ultimately going to lead to people wanting to check you out and find out more about you. And it's really good if you have a book or some type of a program that you want to promote, that you want to fill up. So it can have a huge impact on what it is that you're doing. And maybe you're wondering, though, okay, podcast or podcast guest, which lane do I pick? Which one do I choose to do first? Why not do both of them concurrently? Do them at the same time. As you're creating your show, if you haven't already done it yet, as you're getting ready to launch your show, go and spend some time on podcasts. Be a guest on as many shows as you can get on. I'd recommend one a week if you can, or even one every other week. And then when you're ready, you flick the switch, let everybody know you have a podcast. But while you're guesting, you're promoting that your podcast is coming soon. Your expertise, all of the things that make you who you are as a business owner, that's coming. Look forward to it. I mean, as subject matter experts, that's what we want, isn't it? We want everybody to know we're a subject matter expert. Here's the challenge, though. Here's the biggest challenge for a lot of us. We're here. We are what's called the unheard expert. And you know you're the unheard expert when you're having a lot of virtual coffees, but you don't have many sales. You're having a lot of great conversations, but they're not converting into sales. You attend every networking event possible, but people still don't know who you are. Say, I don't know who that guy is. I've never seen him before. You'll take on any client because you need to fill your sales, right? You don't get to pick and choose. If it's a client, if it's not a fit, you'll still take that client on. You'll also take any speaking gigs that comes, if you get any speaking gigs at all. Your business feels stagnant, you're tired, you're frustrated, you're overwhelmed, and maybe even you're ready to throw in the towel. Who's ever felt that way, that they feel like they are the unheard expert? Nobody knows who they are. Raise your hand. A few people. Okay, good. You're in the right room then. But where we want to be is we want to be here. And for my Canadian friends, that's not Toronto. That's the go-to authority. We want to be seen as the go-to authority. And you know you're the go-to authority when your calendar is full all the time with sales calls and you're booking new clients all the time. You choose who you bring on as clients. You network with purpose. As a matter of fact, when you network with purpose, people are wondering where you are because they never see you, because you don't have to network as much as you were before. You get to pick and choose those speaking gigs that you and the stages that you speak on. And business is thriving, and you are excited to be in business, and you can't wait for what's coming. So given the option of being the unheard expert or the go-to authority, where would you rather be? Would you rather be the unheard expert, or would you rather be the go-to authority? Raise your hand if you want to, in 2024, if you're not already there, be seen as the go-to authority. Raise your hand. Everyone's hand should be up if you're on camera. Great, wonderful. I want to share a quick story with you. When Joanne came to us, Joanne is an oncologist, by the way, in the United States. She was so frustrated. She had her own TV show. She didn't have many viewers. It was on an affiliate network. Anyway, she had this goal, really wanted to share her message with so many people. And the big thing that she wanted to do, she wanted to give a TED Talk. But she knew she had some work she had to do if she wanted to do that. And she came to us and she says, "Hey, Carl, can you help me?" I said, "Sure, absolutely. Let's sit down. Let's figure it out." And when we did that, we started to implement that 3-step process, that Podcast Solutions Blueprint, which, by the way, comes right in the middle here, because you need this if you want to go from here to here. And it overlaps right here because you need all 3 parts. But she wanted to be that expert. She wanted to be seen as that. So we started implementing this. We launched her show, and within, I don't know, 3 months of launching her show, she got invited to her first TEDx event to speak at it. I'm like, oh my goodness, this is amazing for her. We were sitting down, I guess, she's just about, I don't know, 2 months into her second season. We were just planning her second season out a few months back. And she said, "Carl, I'm so excited. I'm so excited." I said, what is it? What? It was like she was bursting at the seams. She's like, "I'm getting on another TEDx stage." I'm like, "That's awesome." And then she also said, "Oh, by the way, I've also been asked to speak at a European event in 2024, and I'm the lead on a publishing project that'll launch in 2024 as well." Phenomenal. That's what I do. I help subject matter experts who are tired of being seen as the unheard expert move to being the go-to authority with a podcast using the 3-step Podcast Solutions Blueprint. That's what I do. And you might be sitting there wondering, okay, where do I start? How do I even begin this process? And that's what I wanted to share with you today. And I know that, and I will pop this in the chat. I know LaDonna is going to send all the information out after today, but a good place to start is with the Podcast Jumpstart Bootcamp. You can book a call with me. That costs you absolutely nothing, by the way. It's free, but the Podcast Jumpstart Bootcamp is a really good place to get things started, to get you started on your journey into the podcasting space. It's where we will spend a whole day together, November 6th from 10 until 4 Eastern time, and we'll explore why you want to start a podcast. What's your goal? What's your desired outcome you want from that show? We'll help you create your basic launch roadmap, as well as your organic marketing strategy, so you can start to talk about this great show that you're creating and that it's coming. We'll give you a list of all the tools and the tech that you need to get going, as well as the templates, so you can successfully carve out your first 5 episodes with ease and simplicity. As well as there's a copy of my ebook that we just printed in June. Well, we didn't print it. It's an e-version. It's an ebook. It's 10 simple steps to launching your podcast. We're going to be passing that along to you. It's typically $700. For today, though, it's $397. That's Canadian, by the way, because I'm in Canada. So I think it's about 280 American. So there's the conversion for you. I'm going to ask you this question, though. I'm going to ask you, if not now, then when? If you're sitting on the fence, if you've been sitting on that fence, should I do a podcast or shouldn't I? Should I do video? Should I do audio? What do I do? Should I? Now is the time. The best time to have launched a podcast, by the way, would have been probably about 2012, 2013. The second best time is now. The second best time is now. There are so many amazing things happening in this space. Join me on this journey, because I want to see you not only live the life that you want, but see how it can have a huge impact on your credibility, your brand, your business, and your overall life. Thank you. LaDonna, I'll throw it back to you.
That was absolutely fabulous. So many people have been putting things in the chat. I already see Dr. Patricia Rogers' hand went up. So Dr. Pat, do you have any questions or comments?
Oh, I was just really agreeing with him because he's in line. I'm in alignment. Everything that's being said about visibility, about big credibility and all that. I'm just rooting. I'm agreeing
Yes,
with
Dr. Patricia,
absolutely.
thank you.
Absolutely. Any other questions for Carl? Yes, Kamal.
Question to Carl. Thank you. Great presentation. That's so awesome, man, what you're doing. In terms of the promotion part, what do you expect the marketing budget to, advertising that level of money to promote a podcast properly so that it takes traction within 90 days? What have you seen?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I mean, I think it depends on the client itself. There are some clients who we work with that don't really come in with a marketing budget. Others say, you know what, I want to allot 10% of my marketing budget, or I want to move everything there. And we're finding that there's more money being allotted to podcasting for marketing budget because it's showing greater results than, say, some of the conventional, even Facebook, ads and stuff like that. So there seems to be a lot more movement in that space. But I would say, look at your budget and say, again, it depends on the size of the company. But I definitely would say if your client is between the ages of 18 and 40, you should probably be putting a ton of your marketing into the podcasting space and leveraging the other marketing platforms that are organic to help you get that word out even more.
Okay. I didn't hear a number. I'd love a number. I'm a numbers guy.
Oh, the number. Oh, well,
Yeah.
I can't give you that number. I cannot give you a number because there are some people who will spend $10,000 on a podcast. There are some companies that will spend $100,000 or $200,000 on a podcast. So it depends on the client, and we walk through that with individuals. But typically, for audio and video, and that's the other thing, there's many moving parts to this. And that's why we have a call to move through those aspects for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Katarina, you have a question?
Hi, Carl. Thank you for your presentation. Do you offer, for those of us that already have podcasts, do you offer strategy sessions or anything more just on the expand your reach side?
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say let's have a call. For sure. Let's book a call and work through some of those things together. It's not my offer today, of course, but you might get some ideas too from the boot camp. I mean, the boot camp is designed mostly for people who are brand new in the podcasting space, but for those who have maybe been around the podcasting space for a while and they want to maybe do a refresh or a rebrand or get some new ideas, you might get some from there too. But definitely, I'm definitely open to having a conversation with you and finding out where you're at with your podcast or your show and what you want to do to make it different.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions for Carl? Carl, I have a question.
Sure.
So, you have all these videos, you're new at it. Where do you suggest the first platform for your podcast to go on? Would that be Twitch, Spotify, iHeart? I have no clue. So
yeah, that's a very good question. And when you're working with an agency like ours, we put you on all of them. There's a process that we walk you through, setting up all of your episodes, and they go on what's called a host site. This is getting a little technical, but you're not just handcuffed to one. As a matter of fact, we want to make sure you're definitely going on Apple. We want to make sure you're going on Spotify. We want to make sure you're going on the top platforms that certainly matter the most to you, but the ones where you're going to get the most traction. And the top platform, based on the numbers that I saw recently, is still Apple. There's a lot of headbutting between Apple and Spotify, shall we say, in the audio space. In the video space, I know that YouTube is a behemoth of a directory of content. There is some challenges with YouTube. A lot of people get shut out of YouTube for whatever reasons, but there are some options in the video space as well for that. But definitely you go on all of them when you work with us. We make sure you're on those top platforms.